today, in my excitement to get something off my chest, I haven't really thought about 1.8, so I've just realised that now. So we'll just have to play it by ear as it goes. Yeah, so what I want to talk about today is, obviously my shtick is self-ownership, anarchism and all that good stuff. And you might think, you know, why even bother? I mean, all this talk of self-ownership, it's like, yeah, well, you know, you say, of course I own myself, you know, but I'm quite happy to just delegate a bunch of stuff. I don't really need to worry about lots of these things. If we lived in an anarchist society, then, you know, who'd make all the decisions? Who'd build the roads? That's the classic one. Who'd build the roads in an anarchist society? And I'm not going to go into that right now because it's partly a silly question, but well, mostly a silly question. But it's not what I want to talk about. So the thing is about, like, really accepting that you own yourself means that all the decisions in your life are all your fault if they go bad. And although this sounds kind of, maybe it sounds radical or something, that's exactly the way it is anyway, whether you accept it or not. So I don't particularly want to go into, what I'm going to talk about now is probably a bit of a touchy subject to a lot of people, and it's to do with what happened during COVID-19. So obviously certain things happened. It was deemed by the authorities that certain medical interventions were a good idea, and lots of people took them upon the recommendation of the state. Fair enough. So now, in certain parts of the world, legal issues are coming up to do with, well, I took this and now I'm not well. And let's face it, all medicines have side effects, and I'm not going into now whether it's a medicine, whether it's gene therapy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing something because you were told to. So, what's going on? Basically, in Spain, questions have been raised to a minister saying, what's going on? We've seen other reports of adverse effects, people with problems, etc., etc. What's the government going to do about it? And the minister just said, what do you mean, what's the government going to do about it? Nobody made you take it. No one was forced to take it. You took it voluntarily. So, I completely agree with that. People did take it voluntarily. You know, no one came knocking on my door telling me to do it. I mean, yeah, fair enough. There was a time when, if I wanted to get on a plane, I'd have to jump through certain hoops if I couldn't prove that I'd been vaccinated. But I just did that, and I did that with my kids. Whereas lots of people just took the easy path. Now the thing is, whether or not you actually assume responsibility for your actions, for certain things the government is just going to say, it's your fault. That's what the state does. It's like, You did that, I didn't do that, I didn't tell you. And maybe this will be a wake-up call for certain people. I mean, I hope it is. I don't know if it will be. But I think it's going to be a surprise, because, you know, a lot of, I got criticised by a lot of people that I knew as if I was being irresponsible, and, you know, for not choosing to get vaccinated. But it was my choice, and basically I wasn't doing it on the grounds of, you know, I'm not doing what the state tells me to do. It wasn't because of it. It's just that I basically considered that, you know, maybe these things need a little bit more time. I'm healthy. I'm not overweight. No, those are things basically for me. In the risk-benefit analysis, it just wasn't worth the risk. So the thing is, it's been shown that the health minister at the time, he also thought that it wasn't worth the risk. So at the same time that we were being recommended to do certain things, lots of prominent figures actually didn't do it. So maybe that's a different topic, obviously. But the point that I'm talking about is self-ownership. So people who don't step up and actually take responsibility for themselves, you're kind of missing a trick, because you're going to be held to it anyway. You know, so it's not like you get out of jail free card just by saying, oh, I did what I was told. I mean, look at the Nuremberg trials. If there's anything that's like ever gone down in history as like, you know, following orders doesn't get you a free pass. So it goes at all levels. It's not just about, you know, being in the military. It's like you're going to be held to account by the state for what you do anyway. It doesn't even matter if the state tells you to do it. It's like, don't forget, being forced, I mean, coercion, coercion's part of society anyway. Coercion and manipulation is just part of everyday life. But in some sense, I mean, when you think about manipulation, me by talking, like giving this talk and like explaining to people things that I think, I'm obviously manipulating you, or trying to, because I'm trying to change your mind, or I'm trying to get you to see things from my perspective or a different perspective. So if your default perspective isn't that, the fact that I'm actually, you're listening to this discourse means that at some sense you're being manipulated. But that's at every single level. No, if you watch an advert, the whole point of the advert is to manipulate you into buying the product, or, you know, whatever. So saying that we're being manipulated, you know, of course you are, so accept it and own it. Yes, you're being manipulated, but that's what language is all about. So now coercion's a different thing. So I think what we saw, perhaps maybe it's just that it's the first time that it's so publicly being done, and a lot of people jumped on it and kind of enjoyed it. Like the coercion of not being able to do certain things unless you've done certain other things. I mean, what was most surprising is the fact how people lots of people jumped on it and wanted to feel like part of the cool club or whatever. And I actually had an argument with someone in front of the school where the kids go, because we were outside and I wouldn't wear a mask. Outside, not even buying one. And it's just, it was just crazy. Because I don't know, I actually started laughing at first because I just thought it was just so ridiculous. And I was getting shouted at by some little guy because I was breathing all over the kids. It's like, how do you breathe all over the kid? I mean, it was how I don't know. Anyway, and it was so. But even if you're part of this crazy club, who I'm doing what I'm told, aren't I good? If anything bad happens, it's still your fault. You're still not. It's not like, oh well, you did a good job. You did what we said, so okay. Don't worry. If anything goes wrong, we'll look after you. No, that's just not the case at all. So, we're so like I said, whether you accept it or not, it's up to you. No one's going to protect you. The state doesn't say, oh well, you did what you said, good boy. No, if you get ordered to go and if you're a soldier and you go and get ordered to go and do something terrible, like a war crime, if you lose that war, you've had it. And that's exactly what we saw. Because at the same time that we know that the Nazi soldiers at Nuremberg, if it would have gone the other way, then the carpet bombings of Dresden and Cologne, that was a war crime. Of course it was. But it just never got prosecuted because that side didn't lose. It's just the way it works. So accept it, own it. Don't have this magical thinking that you get a free pass just because you do what you're told. Because I don't know how to break it to you, but the state isn't on your side. It's just not. That's not what it's there for. We get told of like the social contract, which is just, it's silly. I don't know how many times I can explain this, but it's just like the idea of being part of something that you didn't actually sign up for, and also that in this contract the other side isn't held liable at all. It's like, that's not much of a contract. It's just a ridiculous level of magic thinking that, I don't know, like actually having young kids, a lot of these things, like I always give the example of, if my 10-year-old son came up and gave me this excuse for why he behaved in a certain way, I'd just laugh at him for being, oh well, he's just young, he obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. But adults come and tell you these things. It's like, yeah, well, it's your duty. You have to pay your taxes because that's where all the free stuff comes from. It's like, well, what free stuff? If it was free, I wouldn't have to pay for it. Isn't that the definition of free? When something's free, it's like, imagine going to a restaurant and you sit down and you order it and you eat your meal and stuff, and then the waiter comes up and says, how are you enjoying your free meal? And you're like, wow, cool, so I don't have to pay for it. It's like, no, of course you do. It's like, but you said it was free. It's like, it's free like taxes, not like beer. You're like, right, okay. So that's like, everything, all the good sides that people talk about of the states and stuff, it's just purely in the head. It's not. It doesn't really exist. I mean, where is this? It's as if some people. I don't know. People have this concept of the state. Oh well, you must vote because people struggle to get the vote, and it's like, hold on, you're talking as if there was some kind of like workers' revolution that like created democracy, and that's why we have this state the way it is. And it's like, that's not the way it works. You know, there's always been oppression, and like bit by bit, surely the idea is that we want to work towards some kind of situation where nobody's getting oppressed. You know, that's why slavery is bad. Not because those people have to go and do work. It's because they're forced to go and work. That's why it's bad. So when you're forced to do things by the state, why is that not, you know, why can't people see the similarity there? Or, as I was going to say, so, you know, geographical areas, lots of them, especially in Europe, were just ruled by like a king. And these kings, it's not like this whole divine right of kings thing is just like magic. Surely everyone knows that that's not the way it works. It's like you have the thug who's like, and his gang of thugs, and they go around and they basically oppress and, you know, set up a protection zone. That's like, you know, these lot are mine and I get what they've got, and that's the way it works. And bit by bit, we've moved away from that because it's quite easy to, you know, rebuke the whole divine rights of kings thing. It's kind of, and then you've got the church that had a lot to do with it. So you've got this power struggle, and the best way, you know, the way they say, like the devil's biggest trick, greatest trick was, you know, making everyone think that he didn't exist. Well, that's what democracy is. It's the biggest trick. It's as if like you're in control. Oh, but the people are in control. It's like, well, so if I go and vote, does that mean I get to choose everything that happens? And it's like, well, no, of course you don't. It's like, well, so what am I doing this? It's like, well, you choose people who represent you. And it's like, well, how does that work then? How do they represent me? Because, you know, like if I have a lawyer and they represent me, then I can go and talk to that lawyer and say, oh, you know, I want this to happen, or I didn't do that, or, you know, this is the situation, I want you to intervene, and that lawyer goes and represents you properly. But when you're in some kind of geographical area, and then you've got one person who's meant to represent you, well, obviously he only represents you if you voted the right way, because if you didn't, then you don't get represented by that person anyway. And so they go along, and somehow all of these, so when the state of whatever colour it might be, like, you know, conservative or socialist or whatever, they go along and they're making these changes and the laws and making things better. And this has been going on for like hundreds of years. Most states are like hundreds of years old. So it's like, well, why do we still have the problems that we have? Because surely that's what the state was there to fix. And it seems like we just have less, and so there's lots of talk about, you know, we're making things more fair, but there's no talk at all about we're making things more free, as in freedom, not like gratuity, you know, like, so you know, progressively we have less freedoms than, you know, in Spain, I'd say that there's certain things that are less free now than were in the dictatorship. Or at least they were less, like during the dictatorship, if you said something that didn't agree with the dictatorship, at least there'd be the common decency for you to be dragged out in public and beaten. Whereas, and everyone would think that that was bad. Well, not everyone. Some people would think, oh, you shouldn't be criticising the state anyway, which is exactly in the situation that we've got right now. But now, you just, there's just certain opinions that you're just not allowed to have. Or like I mentioned the other day, the 82-year-old guy who shot someone who broke into his property. It's like, this seems to have really polarised Spain. Because there are lots of people just like, yeah, well, you shouldn't have done that. It's just not right. You shouldn't use guns. And it's, I'm not pro people going around and shooting people. I think that that's bad. You know, I very much think that that's bad. But in the same way that I do martial arts, I'm not pro kicking people in the head. So there's certain things that certain situations that you might prepare yourself for. I mean, I don't do martial arts to prepare, even really to prepare for fighting, because, you know, it's not, maybe that's why you start when you're a kid or something, but when you get older, you know, unless you're actually going to get attacked out of the blue, you're never really going to get into a fight. And now I do jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I kind of think is pretty useless in a fight. You know, that's another topic maybe for another day, but what I mean is, having the ability to do something, you shouldn't, I think we should be free enough to be allowed to prepare for situations however we see fit. So if that's like, if someone wants to be a prepper and like, I don't know, go and fill the cupboards with dehydrated foods or whatever, you know, and have enough for 20 years, fine, you know, knock yourself out. If someone wants to be, you know, a martial artist because they think that, you know, they need to be prepared for any situation and the streets are dangerous, then, you know, fair enough. And if someone wants to have a gun and like protect themselves from people coming into their house, then I don't see why that should be a problem either. Because people, I mean, don't you have the right to protect yourself? I mean, I don't understand. In the same week that this guy's been condemned for shooting a burglar, there were 3 other incidences where like an armed robbery happened in a house and the burglars killed the people in the house, like in the same week. So are you supposed to just let yourself be killed or something? I don't really understand. You know, and that's kind of, that's like going in the same lines as, you're just left to it by the state. No, you get told you've got to do this, but then, you know, you've just got to take one for the country. You know, you've just got to, it's your duty to just get killed, I guess, you know, because we're all civilized, and the price of civilization is you getting murdered, or something like that. I don't really know. I mean, I've had it explained to me that in Spain we appreciate people more than things. So if somebody kills a person to protect a thing, then that's bad. Yeah, that does sound kind of logical. But I can't help but think that the person who is breaking into a house, it values your things more than their life. And so, what are you going to do about that? You know, it's kind of obvious that nobody's going to, you know, if you go out of your house, you know, I think it's a different situation. That if someone breaks into your house and you've got a gun and you scare them off with the gun, and then when they're running away, you shoot them in the back. You know, I'm not down with that. I don't think that that's a good thing to do. But if someone's in my house and they've got a gun and I've got a gun, you know, I don't know what to tell you. Unfortunately, I don't have a gun. But I certainly don't want to be, you know, what would I do? I mean, I'll be honest with you, if someone breaks in here with a gun, I've got kids, you know, my wife needs to defend as well. I'm going to do whatever I can, you know, and that's just, surely everyone should have that attitude. So, anyway, to sum up, if you don't live life as if it's your responsibility to like take actions, you're going to get blamed for it anyway. Like I said, the state will act as if it's your fault anyway. You knew exactly what you were doing, you knew all the laws, and as a consequence, you get punished for your actions because you own yourself. Up to the point that the state lets you. So, that's it for today pretty much. My lunch is cooked. You might notice that I do have quite large lunches, but there's not actually a crazy amount of calories in this. And also, because today is Wednesday and I'll be training jiu-jitsu later, I can't eat before I do jiu-jitsu. I don't know why. It just I don't know, because it's like such intense exercise. I need to have lots of hours before jiu-jitsu to not eat. So I have the big lunch every day, but then I'll have something else maybe at like before 4 o'clock. I'll have another meal, and then that's it. I won't eat again today. So I've already had breakfast. Then I have this, and then I'll have something else at about between 3 and 4, and then I'm done for the day, and I'll go training at 9. So, like I mentioned, this is the slow carb diet that Tim Ferriss made quite popular, and it's great because it's just so easy to just. I don't have to think about what I'm going to eat every day. There's certain foods that I know I can eat, and I just eat them, and that's it. I don't really want to. Anyway, own yourself, or you'll just be owned. See you tomorrow.